So I'll give a quick background about myself, and then we'll get started with the slides, and I'll explain the concepts about Azure Data Factory. So my name is Anirban. I've been working in the industry for more than 10 years now. I work as an Azure data architect, dealing with all the related things in Azure and especially with the Azure data area. So I work with Azure Data Factory, Azure Databricks, Azure Data Lake, Azure Databricks Analytics, and as well as with Azure Analysis Services and Power BI. So that's a brief introduction about myself. Now let's get started with the designing and implementation of an Azure data solution, which is part of DP200 and DP201 course. So let's get started with the agenda. So in this introduction, we will talk about what is Azure Data Factory, why should we use Azure Data Factory, what is an integration runtime in Azure Data Factory, and what is a mapping data flow. And before we end, I'll show you a quick demo on how do we use Azure Data Factory from an Azure portal perspective. So let's get started with Azure Data Factory. What is Azure Data Factory? Data generated by several applications and product is increasing exponentially. So we all know that we are living in the world of data. So all the different applications which are running, they are generating millions and millions of data. Azure Data Factory, or we lovingly call it as ADF, falls under the identity domain of services in the SEO, which is nothing but a search engine optimization catalog, and it is cloud-based integration services. Basically, it works on data. It orchestrates and automates the movement or transformation of data. So ADF, or Azure Data Factory, is a code-free ETL or ELT solution, which is completely based off cloud. You don't need any hardware. You don't need any licenses. You don't need any kind of setup. You quickly can go in without using a single line of code. You can perform your data movement as well as orchestration. As data is coming from a number of different products to analyze and store all this data, we need a powerful tool. Azure Data Factory helps us here. How does Azure Data Factory help us? Storing data with the help of Azure Data Lake Store. So Data Lake Store is nothing but a Hadoop compliant storage. Now we have the Azure Data Lake Store, which is Microsoft implementation of Data Lake Store. We can analyze the data. We can transform the data with the help of pipelines. A pipeline is a component in Data Factory, which groups the related activities to perform a task. We'll see that in detail. Publishing the organized data. Visualize the data with third-party application like Spark or Hadoop. So Data Factory has support for Spark baked inside as out-of-box solution. Now, how does a Data Factory pipeline flow? So you can see that this is an architecture diagram of a Data Factory pipeline. So first and foremost, we have the input data set. What is an input data set? It's nothing but the data which we have in our data store. We need this to be processed. So we pass the data through the pipeline. So input data set is nothing but the source data that we capture, which is coming from the source. Then we have the pipeline. So this is the building block of Data Factory. It basically performs an operation on the data that transforms the data, which could be anything from just data movement or some kind of transformation. So it can happen that you get your data from a source and you want to push it to a destination without doing any kind of transformation. So let's take an example that you get your data from an FTP location. And from that FTP, you want to push it to a SQL database without doing any kind of transformation. You can do that. On top of that, if you want to do any kind of transformation, you can do transformation right from Azure Data Factory using the power of Apache Spark and then push the data to your destination from source. Then we have the output data set. This contains the data that is in a structured format as it has already been transformed in the pipeline storage. It is then given to linked services such as Data Lake, Blob Storage, or SQL. So output data set, I won't say that every time it is structured, you can work with semi-structured output data also. So you can work with JSON, XML, and other semi-structured data set. And then you can push this for your consumption. Now, where do you want to push your data? Of course, you can push it in multiple locations. You can store it in a data lake store, you can store it in a blob storage, or you can store it in a SQL. Now, to establish the connection with these sinks, we use something that we call as link services. Then, what is a link service? Link services store the information which is very important when it comes to connecting to external data sources. So link services are nothing but the username, password, server name, database name. So the connectivity informations are stored in your link services. So there can be different types of link services. You can store it in a data lake store, you can store it in a blob store, or you can store in a SQL. It's not just limited to these three. There are way more link services that we can access in Azure Data Factory. Then we have the gateway. So this is an important concept. What is a gateway? This is called as gateway, or we call it as a data gateway, or we call as a integration runtime. This connects to our on-premises data to the cloud. So we do not need a client installed on our on-premises system so that we can connect to Azure Cloud. Now, there can be scenarios where you're getting your data from an on-premises source, or you want to push the data to an on-premises destination. In either way, since Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based approach, you have to set up a connectivity to the on-premises source or the destination. So what we have to do is we have to provide a networking handshake. Using the data gateway or the integration runtime, we can establish the connectivity between on-premises as well as cloud. Finally, we have the cloud. Our data can be analyzed and visualized with a number of different analytics software such as Spark, R, Hadoop, and so on. So this is the end way where we have analyzed our data, transformed our data, and finally we want to consume it. That's also possible using Data Factory. Now, before I move into why Azure Data Factory, I'll take a quick pause here to check if I have any questions till now. Please let me know if you have any questions.
So what is the use of those pipeline? So that will filter the data and transform by itself, or how it works internally?
So pipeline is a logical grouping of all your tasks. So this is a place where you define your data movement process or your data transformation process. So for an example, you define what is your source, what is your destination, what type of transformation you want to do, what all activities you want to have. All these things comes into the pipeline. So pipeline is a place where you have all your activities which actually perform the data movement and the data transformation.
So we can also write the business logic or some transformation rules inside, like SSIS package.
Yes.
Kind of things.
Exactly. If you're coming from an SSIS background, then pipeline is something like a control flow and data flow combined.
So it's just the straight transformation, no any business rule or something.
No. So think of it like this. Data Factory pipeline is something like an SSIS package.
Mm-hmm.
So in your SSIS package, you can do control flow and data flow. Same way in your pipeline, you can perform your control flow and data flow. The terms are a bit different, but it's essentially same thing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, so let's proceed. So why should we use Azure Data Factory? So there are just a couple of things which are listed here. It can be more than that, way more than that. Improves productivity with shorter time to market. Data Factory is a tool and it doesn't have any kind of language in it. So what we can do is the learning curve is very easy in here. You don't have to do much of learning. So you can very quickly grasp the concepts of Data Factory. So the time to market reduces drastically. It reduces overhead costs because it's a one-stop shop where you can perform your data movement as well as data transformation. So you don't need a lot of things to get involved, a lot of products to purchase. So the cost is very less, and cost is actually very less. If we see the pricing of Azure Data Factory, it's very, very cheap. Transfers data using pre-built connectors. So lot of connectors, if I'm not wrong, currently we have support for around 70 connectors, which is out of the box from Data Factory. So you don't need to create any custom connector. Of course, you can create, but most of the connectors that we use are pre-built in Data Factory. Integrates data cost effectively because the pipelines and the process is such user-friendly, we can very easily save cost. Gets continuous integration and delivery, which is CI/CD. So we can easily connect with a Git repository and set up a CI/CD pipeline with ADF. It's very easy and works the way we want. So we can do our own custom logic in our Data Factory so that we get to know how we want to do this. I see that Vikas has raised hand. Vikas, you have any questions? Okay, seems not. Let's proceed. It improves productivity with shorter time to market. It develops simple and comprehensive ETL and ELT process without coding or maintenance. So as I said, ADF is not just an ETL where we have extract, transform, and load. On top of that, we can perform ELT as well, where it's extract, then load, and then transform. So it doesn't require any coding or any kind of maintenance. It's completely code-free. It ingests, moves, prepares, transforms, and processes our data in a few clicks and completes our data modeling within the accessible visual environment. So Data Factory comes with its own canvas where you can quickly design your transformation logic and your overall program flow very easily. The managed Apache Spark services takes care of code generation and maintenance. So as I said, Data Factory has support for native Apache Spark out of the box. And the good thing is that this Apache Spark is a managed environment. So you don't have to bother about the infrastructure. You don't have to bother about the setup, the configuration, the maintenance of the Spark environment. It's completely managed by Microsoft. You can create your own programming logic without writing code. Please remember, we don't need to write any code, and you can use the power of Spark right from Data Factory. Reduces overhead cost. When migrating our SQL Server DB to cloud, it preserves our ETL processes and reduces operational cost and complexity. So it's kind of similar like we had in SSIS. If we want to migrate on-premises data to Azure, Data Factory is the de facto choice currently. It does everything with breeze, but it's not just limited to moving on-premises data to cloud. There are more things that we can do in Data Factory. It rehosts on-premises SSIS packages in the cloud with minimal effort using Azure SSIS integration runtime. ETL in Azure Data Factory provides us with familiar SSIS tools. So people who are coming from SSIS background, they'll be happy to know that Azure Data Factory is very easy to learn if you're coming from SSIS. The learning curve is very, very simple. You don't need to spend much time in relearning a lot of things. Most of the things will be very familiar if you're coming from SSIS background. And also, if you're still not convinced that you want to refactor your SSIS packages into ADF pipelines, you still have support to run your SSIS packages from ADF. So you can have your existing SSIS DTSX packages, which can be run from ADF. Transfer data using pre-built connectors. It gives access to the ever-expanding portfolio of 90 plus pre-built connectors, including Azure Data Services, on-premises data sources, Amazon S3 and Redshift, and Google BigQuery at no additional cost. So as I said more than 70, but it's actually more than 90, and it's increasing every day. So once we move and see a hands-on, you can see that there are so many pre-built connectors which are available right out of the box from Data Factory. So you can use Amazon S3 bucket, you can use Google BigQuery, Apache Impala, Azure Store. A lot of things are available pre-built out of the box in Data Factory. Integrate data cost effectively. It integrates our data using a serverless tool with no infrastructure to manage. As I said, this is a code-free, cloud-based ETL solution, which is a complete PaaS service and managed by Azure. For Azure Data Factory, we need to pay only for that what we use, and we can scale up the elastic capabilities as our data grows. Again, since it's cloud-based and it's backed up by Azure, it has a pay-as-you-go model. So whenever you're using Data Factory, till the point that you're using, the quantity that you're using, you only pay for that. And whenever you need to grow, scale up and scale down. It transforms data with speed and scalability using the Apache Spark engine in Azure Databricks. So as I said, this also has support for Spark infrastructure with you without bothering about the Spark setup and anything. So you can run big data also with Azure Data Factory. Works the way we want. Data Factory provides a single hybrid data integration service for all skill levels. We can use the visual interface to write our own code in Python, .NET, or ARM to build pipelines. We can add any processing services into the managed data pipelines or insert custom code as a processing step in any pipeline. So if you still want to use code, you have support to run your code in either Python or .NET or ARM, which is Azure Resource Manager. And still, if you're not convinced, you still have support to create custom components. So you can write your custom code and still use your pipelines. Gets continuous integration and delivery connectivity, so CI/CD. It continuously monitors and manages pipeline performance alongside applications from a single console with Azure Monitor. So again, as this is part of the Azure suite, so you can easily integrate this with Azure Monitor, and you can visualize what is going on inside your Data Factory pipeline. It integrates our DevOps process using the built-in support for pipeline monitoring. So this can very easily be integrated with Azure DevOps. So you just have to connect it to Azure Git or a normal Git repository, and you can create your very simple and quick CI/CD pipelines for a continuous integration and continuous deployment. If we prefer a less programmatic approach, we can use the built-in visual monitoring tools and alerts. So not just it has support for Azure Monitor, Azure Data Factory itself comes with an inbuilt monitoring. So it is native to Azure Data Factory. If you do not want to use Azure Monitor, you can use the inbuilt monitoring tool, which is available inside ADF. Okay, now we're going to see what is an integration runtime in Azure Data Factory and what are types of IR that we have. Now, before I move into that, I'll again take a quick pause here to check if I have any questions. Okay, no question. So let's proceed. So what is an integration runtime in Azure Data Factory? So integration runtime, or IR, is the compute infrastructure used by Data Factory to provide the following data integration capabilities across different network environments. So IR is essentially the backbone where the infrastructure is managed by Microsoft. So using an IR, you can perform data flow, you can do data movement, you can do activity dispatch, or you can run SSIS packages. So let's see what all things we can do. So in Azure Data Factory, an activity defines the action to be performed. So these are the terminologies that we use inside Data Factory. If you hear the term activity, this means the action that you want to perform in your Data Factory pipeline. A linked service defines a target data store or a compute service, meaning that this is the place where you define your connectivity and all the other related information. An integration runtime, or IR, acts as a bridge between an activity and linked service. So this is the managed infrastructure. Now, in Azure Data Factory, we have three types of integration runtime. The simple one is the Azure Auto Resolve IR. Second one is self-hosted. And the third one is Azure SSIS IR. Now, based on your requirement, you can choose any of the IR. Okay. So this is a pictorial representation which shows the different types of integration runtimes which can be used in combination to offer a rich data integration capabilities and network support. So typically what we do is when we have our source and destination, which are both cloud-based, then we go for an auto resolve integration runtime or an Azure integration runtime. If you have something which requires an on-premises component, then we go for a self-hosted integration runtime. And Azure SSIS runtime is exclusive to run your SSIS packages. Now, you can use a self-hosted integration runtime to connect to cloud-based source and sink as well, but it's typically not used. So if your source and destination are both cloud-based, then we go for an Azure IR. If it involves any kind of on-premises component, then we go for self-hosted IR. Okay. Now, why we have this inside an Azure virtual network? The reason is that if you have something which is on-premises, then we always should create an Azure virtual network, which will have all the network connectivity set up between your on-premises system and cloud. And using that network, we will connect via the integration runtime. And as you can see, using the Azure integration runtime, we can run Apache Spark program as well. So I got a question from Oro. Oro is saying that I just joined now, wanted to know what are the prerequisites to learn ADF. Well, I would say if you want to learn ADF, the prerequisites are not that much. You can start very easily. It would help if you have a previous background in SSIS. If you don't have that, then also it's absolutely fine. It's a very simple tool to learn and it will not have much of a learning curve. So if you're very new to Azure and want to learn ADF, I won't say that there is any prerequisite that is required for you to fulfill before you start learning ADF. It's simple. You can start fresh. So let's talk a little detail about the IR locations. Data factory location is where the metadata of the data factory is stored and where the triggering of the pipeline is initiated. So what it means is that since Azure is a cloud-based solution, when we create any resource, you have to provide a location of that resource. Data factory is also a resource in Azure. So when you create a data factory, we have to provide a location of that data factory. Now, whenever we create a data factory in a specific location, let's assume that I'm creating in India, since I'm based out of India. So let's say that I'm creating in a central India location. So whenever I will trigger my data factory, the metadata of the data factory will always be stored in central India, and the pipeline will start from that location. It's nothing but the physical data center where Microsoft creates your resource. Meanwhile, a data factory can access data stored and compute services in other Azure regions to move data between data stores or process data using compute services. Now, don't think that if I create my data factory in central India, I won't be able to access data which is stored in any other location. That's absolutely not correct. If you create a data factory which is based out of central India, if your data is in Japan, you can still access the data using data factory. This behavior is realized through the globally available IR to ensure data compliance, efficiency, and reduced network egress costs. Now, how does an ADF which is created in central India can access the data which is stored in Japan? That is the job of the globally available integration runtime. So this integration runtime takes care of connecting to your data and moving the data across the region, as well as maintaining all the GDPR policies along with efficiency and reduced cost. I got another question from Harry. Harry's asking, what do you suggest for practicing with free Azure account for small business SQR or RB storage? Harry, can you please elaborate what do you mean by the SQR and the RB storage? Sorry, I did not understand. The IR location defines the location of its backend, compute, and essentially the location wherein data movement, activity dispatching, and SSIS package executions are performed. Meaning that whenever we create an integration runtime, by default, the integration runtime gets created in the same region as your data factory. But of course, you can change that from the data factory pipeline as well. It's not a requirement that the region where your data factory is, your integration runtime should also be in the same region. You can change it, of course. But what happens is, based on the region of your integration runtime, all your resources, your data movement, and everything will initiate from that location. Okay, so Harry's asking, what do you suggest for practicing with free Azure storage is for SQL and DB storage? Yeah, you can use SQL and you can use Azure storage. I would suggest that if you're practicing and if you're starting new, do not use a SQL because it's a bit expensive. If you have a free account, then I would suggest you create a storage account and use Azure Blob to start your journey, because SQL is a bit expensive. You might exhaust your credit if it's a free account. So, as I said, there are three types of integration runtime that we have in Azure. Azure Auto-Resolved Integration Runtime, Self-Hosted Integration Runtime. So an Azure Integration Runtime is capable of running data flows, running copy activity, dispatching the following transform activity in public network. So you can do all these kinds of transformations and many more. You can do a copy activity. So as I said, we typically use an Azure Integration Runtime if my source and sink is cloud-based. And we can run data flow. Data flow is something which actually helps us in running Spark jobs. Azure Integration Runtime supports connecting to data stores and compute service with public accessible endpoints. So whenever you connect to any public accessible endpoint, let's say that you want to connect to a REST API or you want to connect to a web API, if any of the data store has a publicly accessible endpoint, you can use an Azure IR to establish a connection to that data store. Azure IR provides fully managed serverless compute in Azure. It provides native compute to move data between cloud data stores in a secure, reliable, and high performance manner. So again, Azure IR, if you create, it's a completely serverless process, which is fully managed by Microsoft. And using this power of Azure IR, you can easily move data between cloud-based storage in a high performance way. We can set a certain location of an Azure IR, in which case data movement or activity dispatches will happen in that specific region. So again, as I said, it's not a requirement that if your Azure Data Factory is in Central India location, your IR also has to be in Central India. You can choose your IR in any region. So the requirement typically that we follow is that if your data source is in some region, we set up the IR in that region, because that makes the performance a little better. Then we have the self-hosted integration runtime. So self-hosted integration runtime is typically used when we are running a copy activity between a cloud data store and a data store stored in a private network, especially an on-premises network. Using the self-hosted integration runtime, we can also perform the following transformation activities against any compute resource which is in on-premises or in Azure Virtual Network. Not just this, many more. So if we want to perform data ingestion securely in a private network environment, which does not have a direct line of sight from the public cloud environment, we install a self-hosted IR on the on-premises environment behind our corporate firewall or inside a VPN. The self-hosted IR only makes outbound HTTP-based connection to open internet. So what it happens is that, think of it like you have an on-premises SQL server, and which is behind a private network. And Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based solution, so it has to connect via the internet. Now, in this case, what we would do is we will install a self-hosted IR inside that VNet. Now, the self-hosted IR will create a secure HTTP channel. Using this secure HTTP network, we can establish a connection between Data Factory, which is from internet, and the self-hosted integration runtime. Okay. Self-hosted IR needs to be installed in an on-premises machine or in a virtual machine inside a private network. Currently, running a self-hosted IR is only supported with the Windows OS. For high availability and scalability, we can scale up the self-hosted IR by associating the logical instance on multiple on-premises machine in an active-to-active node. So what we do and how do we set this up? Set the self-hosted IR is one limitation. It currently runs only on Windows machines. It's not supported yet on Linux or Unix. So we can install an EXE, which is available free of cost from Microsoft, which will be installed in any of the on-premises machine which has a virtual private network peering enabled. And this will create the secure HTTP tunnel. And if you want to scale up the tunnel, you can, of course, use multiple logical instances, which will create a bigger tunnel using an active-to-active mode. The self-hosted IR is logically registered to the Data Factory, and the compute used to support its functionality is provided by us. Therefore, there is no explicit location property for a self-hosted IR. When used to perform a data movement, the self-hosted IR extracts data from the source and writes it to the destination. So since the self-hosted IR is logically registered to a Data Factory, so I'll explain in a different way. So what happens is, whenever we have any on-premises component, which is behind a corporate firewall, we install a self-hosted IR inside that firewall. Now, once this is installed, this creates a handshaking with the Data Factory. So each Data Factory is uniquely associated with one self-hosted IR. So whenever we install the self-hosted IR and enable the firewall to enable outbound HTTPS traffic, it will generate a key. This key will then be used in a Data Factory so that Data Factory authenticates this self-hosted IR. That's why we don't need any explicit location, because it's registered via a key. After the logical handshaking has happened between the Data Factory and the self-hosted IR using the key, we can perform the data movement. And third, we have the Azure SSIS integration runtime. So if you already have an SSIS package, it's a complete lift and shift method. You have your existing SSIS packages, you move them into Azure Data Factory, you run them using Azure SSIS natively using Data Factory. So Azure SSIS IR can be provisioned either in a public network or in a private network. On-premises data access is supported by joining Azure SSIS IR to a virtual network that is connected to our on-premises network. So the crux is same. Let's say that you have an SSIS package which needs to access an on-premises data. So we have to use the same self-hosted IR. And sorry. So then what we would do is we would create our Azure SSIS IR inside a private network where we have the data access. Or if you have an SSIS package which doesn't require any private network endpoint, then we can use a public network. Azure SSIS IR is a fully managed cluster of Azure VMs dedicated to run our SSIS packages. We can bring our own SQL database or the managed instance server to create the catalog of SSIS DB that it is going to be attached. So what happens in this case is, let's say that you have some existing SSIS packages which you have migrated to ADF. How SSIS packages typically run is it requires the SSIS DB or the integration services catalog. So Microsoft will give you a fully managed cluster of Azure virtual machines, which will create the runtime for SSIS. Or if you already have a SQL Server license, or you have an Azure SQL managed instance, you can reuse the SSIS DB of the Azure SQL managed instance or reuse the licensing of your SQL Server, and you can save a lot of cost in Azure SSIS DB. We can scale up the power of the compute by specifying the node size and specifying the number of nodes in a cluster. We can manage the cost of running the Azure SSIS IR by stopping and starting as per our requirement. So again, as you see, this is very flexible. Since it's a cloud-based solution, the scalability is simple. If you want to scale up or scale down, it's just a click of a button. You can easily increase or decrease the node size to get more resources. Or if you feel that, okay, I don't need to run my pipelines, I can save some money by stopping it altogether. So these are the types of integration runtimes that we have in Azure. I'll again take a quick pause before we move into data flow to check if I have any questions. So one question I got from Oro is that as part of the full course training, will you cover migration methodology SSIS to ADF? For DP200 and DP201, we don't have SSIS integration in ADF as part of the course, but I can definitely show you that. It's a very simple thing to do. Okay, so let's proceed. So let's talk about mapping data flows. What is a mapping data flow? A mapping data flow is a visually designed data transformation in ADF. Data flows allow data engineers to develop graphical data transformation logic without writing code. The resulting data flows are executed as activities within Data Factory pipelines that use scaled out Spark cluster. Simply put, data flow is a place where at the background you run Apache Spark. Now the Spark engine is fully managed by Microsoft Azure, and you create your data transformation logic using a visual graphical user interface with zero code. Data flow activities can be operationalized via the existing Data Factory scheduling, control flow, and monitoring capabilities. Our data flows will run on our own execution cluster for scaled out data processing. Azure Data Factory handles all the code translation, path optimization, and execution of our data flow jobs. So since data flow is part of Data Factory, you can schedule your data flow, you can monitor your data flow, all this right out of Data Factory. It's not a separate component. You don't have to buy extra. You don't have to pay anything extra. It comes out of the box, part of Data Factory. So since, again, this works with Spark architecture, so you know that Spark is a very vast and architecture. So the scale up, scale down is completely managed by Microsoft, and all the code translation, as this is a code-free editor, how Spark codes are generated and translated, these are all taken care by Microsoft. Along with that, all the Spark optimization is also part of ADF. Okay. Now what we're going to do is, let me actually show you a quick demo of ADF where I will use a very simple file which I will transform using mapping data flow in Azure. So this is my Azure portal. So what I have done is in this Azure portal, I have created a resource group. So this resource group is in East US location. And in this resource group, I have created a storage account. So in the storage account, I have a data lake store. So this is a data lake store that I have created. So this is a data lake store. So I have created a container in this called as demo container. And inside this, I have two folders. One is a source, the other one is a sink. So if I go inside this source folder, I have a file here. This is a dummy file that I have uploaded called msft.csv. If I show you the data, I'm sorry, folks, this is taking a bit extra than I expected. Yeah. So here you can see that this is the Microsoft Windows App Store data. So it has an ID, which is nothing but an identity column. It has the name of the app. So which app is available in Windows App Store? What is the average rating of that app? How many people have rated this app? What is the category of this app? Which was the first day when this app was published or available to people? And what is the pricing tier? So this is the information that we have in this CSV file. So if I go to the end, I have 5,200. This is a wrong data. Let me delete this one. So this is the data set that we have. So we have around 5,322 rows, which are available in this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this data as our source. And I'm going to do a very simple transformation of this data using Data Factory and Data Flow. And we will spit out a file, which will be stored in a different folder. So let me show you how do we do this transformation and what all things we use in Data Factory to perform this activity. Let me close this one. Now to create a Data Factory, what I will do is I'll go to my resource group and I'll click on this plus add. This will take me to the Azure Marketplace and I'll search for Data Factory. Click on this. And click on create. So first and foremost, it's asking me for my subscription, my resource group, and my location. So let me create this in East US region. And it's asking me to give the name. So let's call it as demo AZ ADF. Oh, the name is okay. The name is available. And this is the version. So we currently use V2. So I'm using ADF V2. Click on next, git configuration. So here it's asking me that before creating the Data Factory, do you want to connect to a code repository? You can either use Azure DevOps or you can use GitHub, or you can configure this later as well once the Data Factory has been provisioned. Then we have networking. So here it's asking that how do you want to enable your Data Factory? Meaning that your Data Factory, if you don't click on this managed virtual network, meaning that your Data Factory will be available over the internet. If you enable this, then your Data Factory will be inside a virtual network. And here it's asking that when you create a self-hosted integration runtime, how the connectivity will happen via a private endpoint or via a public endpoint. So I'll just choose this as public endpoint because I don't want to set up any virtual network now, neither in here, this case. Then we have tags. So tags is something where you can quickly identify your Data Factory. So let's say that I have 5 Data Factory. So I can say that this is my Data Factory. And the value I can say that this is df1. So I can quickly identify my data factories using the tag. This is completely optional. And finally, we click on review and create. It's that simple to create a data factory. Then we hit this create button, and this will initialize the deployment. And after the deployment, the data factory will be created. So just give me 1 or 2 minutes, it will get deployed. Or now, click on this. So this is the landing page that we have. Here we have some Azure related activity. We are not interested in this. To open a data factory, click on this author and monitor. It will open up its own workspace. It takes some time for the first time boot. So this is how the ADF landing page looks like. So if you look into the right hand side, this is the update which comes from Microsoft. Microsoft periodically pushes what all updates are coming in ADF. Then here you can switch. So if you have multiple data factory, you can switch to a different data factory right from here. This is the notification window. This is your feedback window, and these are the help information. Inside here, you have some wizards where you can quickly create a pipeline, create a data flow, create a copy activity, create a template, configure your Azure SSIS, or set up your code repository. And these are some of the quick start guides from Microsoft. On the left hand side, we have the home page. We have the author. This is the window that we will be concentrating most. This is the monitor window. So if you go here, you can see your data factory pipelines, what has been run, how much time it has taken, what is the result, is it a success or a failure? All these things you can see from here. And manage is something where you can define all your linked service, integration runtime, etc. Now, if I go to this integration runtime, you see this auto resolve integration runtime. Let me close this one and expand this one. So this is the auto resolve integration runtime, or the Azure integration runtime, which is automatically created whenever you create an Azure data factory. And this is a public endpoint, and this is auto resolve region, meaning that since I created my data factory in East US, this is automatically resolved and created. If you want to create a new integration runtime, click on this plus new, and here you can choose. So if you want to use an Azure SSIS integration runtime, you can select this option and you can click on continue, fill up the required information. So for an example, what is the location, how many cores or nodes you need, all these things you can set up in here. Or if you want to create an Azure or a self-hosted integration runtime, you can click it from here. Here again, you can choose, do you want to create an Azure integration runtime? Here you can choose your region. Or do you want to create a self-hosted integration runtime to connect to your on-premises network? Then the next concept that we have to understand is your linked services. So linked services, currently you see that you have nothing in here. So linked services are something where we provide an information of where or which connection we want to connect to. So to connect a linked service, so for my case, when I'm showing you the demo, I want to connect to a data lake store, which is Azure based. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this plus new, and you can see that we have all these Azure connectors database connectors, file-based connectors, protocols, NoSQL, and apps. So these are out-of-the-box connectors available from Data Factory. And you can choose different compute units also. Okay, so I'm going to connect to a data lake store. So this is a Azure Data Lake Store Gen 2. So I'm going to quickly search for it, or else you can find it from here also. You can go in here. You can see there should be, where is that? Data Lake Gen 2, or you can search it in here also. So Azure Data Lake Gen 2, click on continue. It's asking you to give a name. I'll just keep it as it is. How do you want to establish a connection? Since this is cloud-based, so I'm going to connect with the auto-resolve integration runtime. How do you want to connect? You can use either account key, service principal, or managed entity. These are the security measures. So I'm going to connect using the account key. I can select my subscription. I can select my storage account name. Just a sanity to check test connection. So it's successful. Click on create. And it's that simple to establish a connection to a storage. It can be anything. So once these two things are configured, I'm not going to these things. This is something, again, if you want to set up a code repository, you can select your repository and you can connect from here. Triggers is something I'll talk a little later. Global parameters is something like, think of it as an SSIS global parameter. If you create a global parameter here, you can use it across any of the pipelines that you create in this Data Factory. And this is a customer managed key. So if you want to have a secure key with you, you can use it here. Now let's go to the most interesting window, which we call as author. So if you go to this author, you can see we have three things: pipelines, data sets, and data flows. If you click on this plus, you can create a new pipeline, you can create a new data set, or you can create a data flow. Copy data tool is nothing but a wizard. Pipeline from template is something, if you click on it, Microsoft has given us a lot of templates. So you can quickly use a template. These are predefined and pre-filled template. So let's say that I want to get a data from a database and load it into an Azure Data Explorer. I can click on it, and Microsoft has a predefined architecture with me. I can change the data set and everything, and I can quickly get started. Or if you want to create a pipeline from the start, what we typically do is you can either click on these three dots and click on a new pipeline, or you can click on it this and click on a new pipeline. So if I click on it, let's keep this pipeline as my demo ADF pipeline. So once we create it, let me close this one. This window, the canvas that you see, this is our play area. And here we have all these different activities that we can use. So I will not go through all of these activities. These are very self-explanatory. So copy data is something, it says that you connect to a source and connect to a destination and you can move the data. If you want to use an Azure function, you can use this. If you want to run a Databricks component, you can do that. Use SQL activity, if you want to run, you can do it from Data Factory. If you want to append a variable, delete a file, execute another pipeline from one pipeline, execute an SSIS package, get the metadata of a file, perform a lookup, run a SQL stored procedure, set a value to a variable, all these things you can do from here. And how do we do that? So for our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to this specific file in the source folder and perform some transformation on it. So I need a data flow. So how do you use them in ADFS? You just drag and drop it into this window. Now, if I already had a data flow, I could have used this. If I don't have, I can create it right from here. So I'll create a new data flow. Now here we have two things: mapping data flow and wrangling data flow. Wrangling data flow, I'll not talk about it because it's a preview feature. we will use this data flow, which we call as mapping data flow, which is a code-free data transformation at scale. So click on OK. It's asking me to name this data flow. So let's call it as my demo data flow. Now, what I have to do in here is I have to perform a source. So I have to add a source to connect to this file. So what I'm going to do is click on this add source. And it's asking me to name this source. Let's call this as ADLS source. And it's asking me to select a data set. Now, what is a data set? I haven't created a data set yet. A data set is nothing but the exact file or the table or the HTTP request. So in this case, my source is a file. So I'll create a data set from here. So again, it's asking me, hey, what is your data set? So my data set is a data lake store. Select it. What type of data you want to get? You can get Avro, delimited text, Excel, Parquet, ORC, binary, XML, or JSON. So I am using a CSV. So I'll select delimited text. Click on continue. Now it's asking me, what do you want to name it? Let's keep it as delimited text. Does your data first row as a header? I say that yes. My first row is a header. Now it's asking me, how should you establish the connection to this data lake store? So I already have a link service created. So I'll use this same link service. Now I have to provide the exact file path. So I can quickly select this, go inside this container, go inside this folder, and select this file. And how do you want to get the schema? So I say that get the key schema from this connection of the store, and it will give me the schema. Oh, the name is wrong. Remove this. Now, what I can do is I can go to this projection and I can see the schema already available with me. Now we have a lot of other options. I'll quickly talk about them. Schema drift is something that is a very common problem we face in ETL. Is that, let's say that tomorrow my file structure changes. If you click on this checkbox, Microsoft will not fail this ADF pipeline. It will log the drifted schema. If you say that infer drifted schema. But if you click on this validate schema, then what's going to happen is if your schema changes tomorrow, then your pipeline is going to fail. If you want to skip some lines, you can do that. Sampling is something that we typically use during a development phase. In source options, we can see multiple things. We can use delimited path. We can use wildcard path. If you have multiple files, you can do that. If there are no files found, it will not give you an error. It will simply proceed. If your data has multi-line rows, you can do this here. This is a very good thing. So you can store your file name. So ADF is capable of getting your file name also, and you can store in a new column. This is your schema. Optimize is that since I said that data flow runs on a Spark cluster, so all the partitioning is managed by Microsoft. You can, of course, set a single partition, or you can set your custom partition using the algorithm that you need. Or if you want to manage this by Microsoft, choose the current partition. Inspect will show me the column. Another good thing is that here, during your development time also, you can visualize the data. For that, you have to enable this data flow debug. I'm not going to do that because it's a bit expensive, but it's possible. So now that I have my source created, I want to get some transformation. So what type of transformation I can do? Let me see the data once. So let me do a simple transformation. So let me do a transformation and let me get only those rows where the rating is more than 3.5. So if there are any apps where the rating is less than 3.5, I'm not going to take those apps. So what I'm going to do is, again, people from a SSIS background will be very simple. We are creating a flow in here. So first step is to get the source. Then we have to perform the transformation. So if you click on this plus button, you have different types of transformations available. Join, you can join with other data set. Conditional split, you can split the data based on a condition. Exists will check if a specific column or value exists or not. Union, lookup, derived column to create a new column. Select means you can fetch some columns. Aggregate, as the name suggests, sum count. Surrogate key, pivot, unpivot. Window is something like a time frame. Flatten is something, let's say that your source is a semi-structured data like a JSON format. From there, you can perform a flatten and you can convert it into a CSV. Ranking function, filter, sort, alter row, all these things you can do from here. Now, since I want to get some rows from here where the rating is more than 3.5, I will use something which I call as conditional split. So in this conditional split, I will write a condition saying that ratings more than 3. This is one stream. The other stream is ratings less than 3. Okay. Now, how do we write the condition? So ADF data flow has a plethora of functions available. Just click on this box and you have the expression builder. So in this expression builder, you can write your expression here. Now you can see that we have so many different functions available here. A plethora of functions are available here. Okay, so I will write an expression saying that in my input schema, I have a column which is called as rating. So I'm going to say, give me those columns. Let me use a function. I'll say greater or equal rating. Let's say it's 3.5. So give me those rows where my rating is greater or equal 3.5. I can use greater also. I can use greater as well. So this will give me only those rows where the rating is greater than 3.5. Okay. Now I can do multiple transformations here. I'm just showing you only one transformation, and then finally I will write it into a file. So I will use a sync. So this sync also requires a data set, and it's asking me which output do you want to get. So I'm saying that I am getting the output of ratings more than 3. Did I say 3.5? I should have given 3. Sorry. So I'll write it into a file. So I'll create one more data set. I'll write it to a data lake store. Same drill. I'll create a CSV file. I'll say first row as a header. I'll reuse this link service. So you can see that for each of these activity, I don't have to create a new link service. I can reuse the link service, and I'll create a new data set. So I'll write it in this sync. You see that the file name I'm keeping as blank. Okay. Now what's going to happen is that if I go to the settings, here you have different options. This is a Spark based architecture. You can create a pattern based file, partition based file, column based file, or a single file. So I'll say that. And if I go to this mapping, you can map your file as well. You can change the order, you can remove the columns, all these things you can do. And since it has partitions, you see that currently I am using a current partition. As soon as I change this one, Microsoft automatically prompts me to say that since you're outputting to a single file, please change this to single partition. That will improve the performance. So you see that I'm using Apache Spark. I'm not writing any code. The performance is completely managed by Microsoft, and Microsoft is giving me a prompt to better the performance. So it's that simple. And let's call this file as, let's call it as output.csv. Okay. So all my transformations are done. I have created a mapping data flow. Now, as a good practice, we always do this validate all to check that if there is any error in my development. So my development looks good. Now I'll go back to my pipeline. So I have my data flow ready. Now, how do I trigger this? First and foremost, we have to do this publish. So what happens is when you do this publish, ADF performs the code check-in. So this is completely managed by Microsoft. As I said, no, Microsoft manages this completely. So until and unless you do a publish, you won't be able to run this. Once this is published, how do we run this pipeline? So you can either do a schedule-based run or you can do an ad hoc run. Now, if you want to schedule your pipelines, that is called as triggers. Click on this add trigger and you can click on a new trigger. Click on new and you see that you can give a name and you can schedule this, saying that I want to run it on a specific time zone and I want to run it every minute, hour, day, month, week. When do I want to run? I can schedule it from here. Or if you want to just run it, click on this add trigger and trigger now. Click on OK. So now what's happening is we'll get a prompt in here and I can show you. So see that the pipeline started running. Now we can go to this monitor window. And you see that the pipeline has started. So this is the out of the box mechanism where we can see the pipeline execution. Now you can click on it and it will show you the details of all this. So you see that I had only one data flow. So this is the input. And here it's running. So there are multiple steps that happens. Acquiring compute means that Microsoft is setting up the Spark infrastructure. It takes some time because it has to set up the virtual machines, then set up the Spark system and all that. After this is done, we will have the data flow running and finally we'll have the file created. So please give me some time. This will take 3 to 5 minutes, something in between. Based on that, we will have the file created. So till this pipeline runs, please let me know if you have any questions. You can refresh the status as well. It's still waiting for the cluster to start up. Bharat, I can see you have raised hand. Do you have any questions?
I have a sorry. I have a question. Like this is Microsoft Azure, so it is it is not Visual Basic, right? Visual Studio. Sorry, it is not Visual Studio. It is utility from the Microsoft Azure itself, right?
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh. So all these components which you are showing, those are the functional components of the Microsoft Azure itself, right? So it is one kind of big large utility where you can do all this uh, data functionality.
Exactly.
Mhm. Okay. So you cannot connect the Microsoft Azure from Visual Studio.
Okay, so Microsoft Azure is a portal which you can connect via any browser.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the cloud concept, So here you do everything on cloud. You don't need any tool, you don't need any hardware, you don't need any software. You just need an internet connection. That's it.
So
So all
this
these things that
Microsoft
I'm
Azure,
doing.
so this Microsoft Azure is already set up in on this cloud server itself.
Yes,
So
you
when you
just
log in,
buy the
go
subscription
ahead.
from Microsoft and
Mm-hmm.
you're good to go. You don't need anything else, just a Microsoft subscription.
Microsoft subscription, and then you just log in, and then everything is set up over there. You just need to
Exactly.
create this. Okay.
Okay.
But whenever I'm executing my SSIS and all those stuff on the Azure, in that case, still I need to create an SSIS and all those on Microsoft Visual Studio.
Yeah, so
Microsoft Studio,
creating an
right?
SSIS package, you need Visual Studio, but creating a
Yeah.
data factory pipeline, you don't need any tool. You can just log into the Azure portal and you can start.
Mhm. But we cannot create SSIS through the Microsoft Azure, right?
No.
No. Okay. 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 Thank you.
You're welcome. So you can see that my data factory pipeline has run successfully and the data flow also has run. So the good thing is that you can click on this and you can see even the rows. So I got 5321 rows from here. In the conditional split, I got 4011 rows, which got written. So if you go here and refresh now, I have the output.csv created. And here I will have only those rows where the rating is greater than 3. So I have 3.5, 4, 3.5, etc. So this is the power of Azure Data Factory. Without writing a single line of code, we used a Spark program which performed a simple transformation. You can click on this and you can see the details. But of course, we have very big power. So you can use big data, you can use different transformations, you can combine them together and work on it. With that, folks, I will pass on to the control to the Intellipaat team so that they can go ahead and take up any questions if you have.
Hi guys, this is Charles Christopher. I am the Senior Course Advisor and a Career Counselor. Hope the session was informative. So what I'll do is I'll take you through the course program and the benefits, why you should go with Intellipaat, and I'll explain you what's in it for you. And what are the benefits you're going to get, what is the schedule, everything in detail. So this is the Intellipaat homepage, and here is where you're going to search the course. It's Azure Data Factory. You can either type Azure Data Factory, you will get the program, or you can just type factory. You'll be able to get the program. So here is the program. So now this particular program is in collaboration with Microsoft. So the course content is designed by the industry experts of Microsoft. And Azure Data Factory, like we all know, belongs to Microsoft themselves. So this is a 24-hour duration instructor-led training. So if you scroll down, you will see the overview, and below that you will see fees, and here you see, most importantly, course content. So you'll be learning everything from the very basic to advanced step by step. And if you click on each and every module, here you see the subtopics and everything that is going to be covered in very detail. So you can click on each and every module, what you're going to learn, along with hands-on. So each and every module has hands-on. So this is purely a practical learning, not theoretical or boring lectures. So the instructor who is going to train you has 15+ years of experience in IT. So any questions, you are free to ask. As the instructor is live, he's going to answer to you. And this is going to be purely a practical along with hands-on. And this is a lifetime access that we provide to you. That means you can attend as many classes as you want. You can retake as many batches as you want. Nobody's going to stop you or question you. Irrespective, you attend the class or miss the class, live recorded videos of your own classroom is also provided to you, so that you can access live recorded videos at your own convenient time, just to brush up your knowledge and understand what you have learned. And the flexible schedule, like I've already explained to you, it's unlimited sessions. You can start whenever you want. We have fresh batches every month. We have at least 4 fresh batches. So this is the schedule. The next batch is going to start on 22nd, and the next fresh batch after that is on 28th. The next is on 5th and 20th. So you can choose either of these batches to begin. Let's say, for an example, you started on 22nd and you attended a couple of classes and something came up, you had to discontinue. No problem. You can drop an email and retake the batch from the beginning again on either on 5th of December batch or 20th or so on. Totally your choice. And this course, if you scroll down further, after the course content, you will see projects, Microsoft Azure Data Factory projects. So these are the real-time industry projects that you're going to have hands-on exercises on. Well, this is very, very important. Excuse me. This is very, very important, because that is what is going to help you become proficient with the technology in and out. That is what ideally is going to help you clear your technical rounds during the interview if you're looking for a job change. And you also get a chance to learn through case studies. So everything is mentioned in detail on the website itself. And if you scroll down further, you find a tab that says Microsoft Azure Certification. So this course is designed for you to clear exam DP200, also called, and you'll be receiving a Microsoft Achievement Completion Certificate once you complete the exercises and projects. But there is an official exam, which is DP200. If you are interested, or if your objective is to appear in the exam, you can. And we have more than 92. We have more than 92% of passing aggregate for this particular certification exam. And let us know before you take the exam, because we provide you a mock quiz on our website. If you score 60% in the mock quiz we provide to you, that means you can easily clear the certification exam in just one attempt. So it's unlimited mock quizzes, but make sure that you score 60% before you appear in the exam, and be prepared. So we provide you certification preparation as well. And finally, people who are looking for a job change or a job. So we provide you job assistance as well. Now, job assistance works in 3 steps. Step 1 is we are going to rework on your resume, which is very important. We are going to mention about this as a skill set and mention a couple of projects as well. Step 2 is we are going to prepare you for the interview with the list of mock question and answers. So we are going to prepare you for the interview even before you're facing an interview. And the final step is we are going to, excuse me, we are going to market your resume to the 80 MNCs that we have tied up with. Companies like TCS, Cisco, Standard Chartered, Sony, Capgemini, MU Sigma, Accenture, just to name a few. But once you start getting interview calls, how you perform in the interview or how you proceed from there, that is left up to you. But not to worry, for you to become industry ready, whatever is required, we take care of that responsibility 100%. So we are going to guide you where you can access the lab for you to practice. We provide you a lifetime technical support assistance whenever you're stuck or whenever you have any query. We're there to help you, guide you, and assist you. And it is a lifetime access, like I told you, attend as many batches, and it's going to be interactive, not any sort of boring lectures. You already have a feel of how the training is going to be through this webinar. So it's going to be informative in a practical learning platform and interactive sessions. You get live recorded videos of your own classroom as well, so that Monday to Friday, whenever you're available for an hour or so, you can go through the recordings just to understand what you learned in the previous class. Now, about the schedule, it's going to be 3 hours on Saturdays, 3 hours on Sundays. And Indian Standard Time, it's as per the website, 8 p.m. in the night to 11 p.m. in the night. As for the US, it's going to be 9:30 in the morning, 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I repeat, it's Saturday and Sunday, 3 hours Saturdays, 3 hours on Sundays, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 3 hours Saturdays, 3 hours on Sundays. As for the price, it is $316 for self-paced. Self-paced is the pre-recorded video along with downloadable PDF materials in it. And online is live instructor-led training, like the webinar that you guys just attended. So self-paced is $316 US dollars, and online is $527 US dollars. As per the website, you get 10% discount, but if you drop your interest directly to me, you get a flat 30% discount for online with self-paced for free. So whether you go for US dollars or whether you're in India, you want to pay in INR, is the same. There will be 18% GST if you go for INR. You will be getting 30% instead of 10%, plus 18% tax. So hope I have answered, hope I have explained you the complete program, the benefits, what you're going to get learning through IntelliPad, how you're going to improve yourself, and what sort of learning it's going to be, what is the pricing, what is the schedule. And this is my detail. You can either take a screenshot of it or save it. I'm available on both these numbers, the Indian number as well as the United States number, on WhatsApp as well. You can either directly WhatsApp me on either of these numbers or drop me an email to charles.christopher@intellipad.com. For any questions you might have, I will be happy to answer them and help you get started with the program.
I have a question on the duration of the course.
It's 24 hours. It's 24 hours of training program with the live instructor that goes for about 4 weekends. So 3 hours Saturdays, 3 hours on Sundays. That is 6 hours a week. So we are talking about 24 hours of instructor-led training. So that goes for 4 weekends.
Okay. So on the case studies, I can see the 6 case studies you have mentioned. So for all these case studies, like the trainer is going to review all those case studies, or just we have to complete and we'll keep it as that?
No, see, the trainer is going to review a case study or 2. Later part, you will have to do all by yourself. If it's teaching you everything, it's going to be just copy paste. So if he teaches 1 or 2, then you have an idea where to begin, where to end. So that is what is going to help you become proficient on your technology. That is how you're going to train yourself all by your own. But not to worry, we provide you a lifetime technical support assistance. Even though you're stuck somewhere while trying to do all by yourself, whether be it a project or whether be it an exercise, we provide you a lifetime technical support assistance. Drop an email. My technical team is going to help you, guide, and assist you.
Okay.
So this course will give us do some practical work also, like on going on the Azure
Yes,
Cloud
these
service.
are the real-time industry projects, which is mentioned on the website. These two are the real-time, and here are 3 projects. So in total, you'll have a hands-on experiences on 5 projects.
Mhm. So can we get whatever the today's the PowerPoints slides? Can you email me those slides
Yes.
for the basic
Don't
learning?
worry. Today's complete session is going to be emailed to you, and also is going to be present on YouTube shortly. You guys have dropped your email addresses. It's going to be definitely emailed to you with all the information. And I believe you have also taken a screenshot or saved my number.
Yeah, I
Or
already.
any questions,
I already.
feel
Yeah,
free
Charles,
to
I already did.
drop me a
Yeah.
call. It's not just I'm trying to be a salesperson here. Any questions you might have, not only about this particular program, why this program, or you need any career advising sessions, or you need why this course, or you want to know about any other courses in cloud, maybe AWS or DevOps or a Google Cloud, let me know. I'll be happy to help
Yeah,
you out.
I'm interested more in this Azure, Azure technology.
Perfect. So
Yeah,
any questions, feel free
I
to ping
already
me on
took the
WhatsApp or email.
SSIS from your end. I already took the couple of
Wonderful.
just from yeah.
So any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please drop me an email or drop me a message on WhatsApp. I'll be happy to help you. Have a great day ahead. Thank you so much for your time again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.